A lot to read, but it's to do with the Illuminati and about our system. But we'll get to that later, later on at some point. So basically, what I found is that when you go back in ancient times, you basically come to the area of Mount Ararat, where Noah had, where his boat had landed, on the Mount Ararat after the flood. And then, of course, his sons and their wives are the ones that produced the nations, aren't they? But they departed. Some of the generations of Noah eventually moved away to different lands, to different places. Went and started to follow, instead of following God, they departed from God and went and followed after Satan and his fallen angels, which of course would come under different god names. So this would be after the situation with Babylon, after the Tower of Babel, when the languages get confused, so they depart. They get scattered amongst the nations, and they, of course, they'll communicate with Satan, but he'll have a different name because obviously the languages got confused. So later on, you find in different areas around the world, you find the god Marduk of Babylon. You find Satan coming under different god names. So what you have to do is that through an analysis, to identify Satan, you actually have to look at the god Baal of the Canaanites, and you find that the Jews identified that with being Satan, right? And then, of course, later on, the Greeks eventually identified Baal with Zeus, the god Zeus. So you find that Zeus has to be another form of Satan. And one of the interesting things between Baal and Zeus is that they could cause earthquakes to take place, and in Mary Baxter's book, Satan was seen in hell laughing about how he killed thousands of people with earthquakes. And then, of course, later on, you when you look into the Roman world, you find that the god Jupiter is Zeus, and so it means that Jupiter is Satan, the god Jupiter. And then you find that Lucifer, the Roman god Lucifer, because Lucifer was a Roman Venus god, him and Jupiter have the same, are connected to being light bringers. That's what I found. Now, to get to our point of our system of today, we have to look into the Roman world. The Rome had laid the foundations for government because they became an empire. They stopped being a kingdom and they became an empire. In the book of Daniel, it talks about how the Rome would become diverse from all other kingdoms because they became an empire. And it also says in Daniel 2 that they will mingle in with the seed of men. Now, through my analysis, the seed of men is to do with the religions of men. It's really to do with the religious context of this and how they were connected to basically almost like pleasing the nations. This was done by Constantine, so he's a very important figure because Constantine is going to help us understand that, because he was a Roman emperor, right? So he of course he divided his kingdom, but he mingled in with he according to Doc Marquis, he actually mixed Christianity with paganism to create the state religion, so the pagans and the Christians could come into the church. To me, this is the form of New Age, right? Where you mix in different religions together to create a new religion, a new type of belief system. this is going to help us to clear up the confusion as to why the world's in serious confusion when we get to that later. So Constantine, of course, helped to bring some Christianity around the world, his own form of it. So we need to think of that. Because our country is government, it means we've got Rome in us, okay? Rome in our country, because of government. Then later on in life, in Germany, which is to do with this book here, in the 1700s, a Jesuit, right, which are Jesuits are connected to the Catholics, they're like the Catholic police, okay? They are, of course, that's Roman. So we've got a Roman, right? So every time I think of a pope or anything like that, I'm thinking Rome, okay? You need to think like that. So a Jesuit man by the name of Adam Weishaupt, he went against the church, and he developed a secret society called the Illuminati. Now, here's the plans that he had to have a one world government. So again, a one world government would be Rome, right? A one world government, I believe, is going to be where the Antichrist comes in. Because when the Antichrist has world dominion, and this will be connected to why in the Bible you have the beast of Rome connected to the Antichrist, right? Because it's going to be a one world government, which means it's a Roman type system. The plans of the Illuminati in the 1700s has practically happened now. The only thing that's missing in their plans is the one world government. They haven't abolished the governments yet, right? But eventually they're going to want to abolish all governments. That here is abolish marriage and families. That's one of the plans. To abolish private property, abolish governments, abolish religion, the church from the world, okay? Have science, reason for society. 6, have abortions, because he used to practice abortions. 7, rid patriotism. And 8, study ancient religions for enlightenment. Mixing different religions, just like Constantine did. Constantine, you could say, was the first one to do this. Constantine taking bits of religions here and there. If you look at some of the old Vatican churches and that, you'll sometimes see little paganism pieces here and there in some of the artwork of the Vatican. I think there was one that was Artemis, I think they had. But you'll find certain strange icons and things like that in these churches, and it's mainly it's Constantine that started that off. But Adam Weishaupt is doing it in a different way. It's the same kind of thing, but it's just a little bit different. It's just that he doesn't want it to be to do with the church. Now, when you compare his plans for today, you find that in the United Nations they have the Illuminati. The word Illuminati is connected to the Roman god Lucifer. Remember, Lucifer was a Roman god, that's Satan. Right? So that's where the word Illuminati comes from. And when you look at the United Nations, I find it interesting that the United Nations have the Roman god Lucifer's Trust by Alice Bailey. She was the publisher, and she was the one that created the New Age movement, which is a form of almost like mixing different religions together to create a new one, to create a new belief system. She's doing something very similar to what Adam Weishaupt used to do. Now, when you look at Brock Adams of the United Nations, he had the plans was to rid from the minds of men religious dogma, again, to get rid of the church, loyalty to family traditions, so they don't want men to be family oriented, so this is to help to break up the families, so the children can look to the government as their father figure in a sense, while the father is going on these drunken parties and stuff like patriotism, and his individualism, things like that. So you can compare that this is what they want to do in order to achieve world government. This is what they actually need to do. So they need to break up families, they need to get rid of religious dogma, which is what Adam Weishaupt wanted. Right? Now when you compare this of today, right, of how they're messing up the world, because remember we're living under Satan's Roman system just now, because of us having governments,